All right, so given these math numbers based on last year and this year, and like I said, this is just the regular seventh grade math, not no accelerated, really no block included in that because I didn't pull Podorf's numbers. So that's just your regular across the board seventh grade math. What are the trends that you're seeing in last year compared to this year?
Well, the equations seem to be holding pretty steady.
Let me go back up to the everybody because that's really a bit more important number.
Okay. The equations seem to be actually having improved, so that's very good.
Yeah, because that's an important piece going forward.
It is. And I think also we changed the a little bit of the order. We made sure that we really hit integers harder because I think that might have impacted last year a bit.
There's not much difference there
No,
though across
it's
the
not.
board. It's not notable. I mean, it's 1
Yeah.
point.
But order of operations, it's fairly steady.
Mm-hmm.
Properties
little better this year.
went down, and I do think that you're looking at we just have more inclusion, and so we're going to see that one is kind of a higher level thinking kind of test. It's less just a problem that you pull apart and do. It's less computation, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Sure.
And because we don't have the blocks, so we have those students in the regular classroom. We've got more of the level 3, more of the level 4, ELL, and so I think with anything that has a lot of words, you're going to see a dip.
So language is an issue.
It is.
Yeah.
It is, and reading.
And
So-
amazing how that goes across the board.
It does.
So, as far as the special ed piece, it was divided to one team last year,
It was divided to one team.
and you had all of the special ed.
Yes.
So, how did that work then? Did you have a co-teacher every period?
There were 2 periods that I had a co-teacher, and they tried to schedule kids with an IEP during those 2.
Oh, okay, got it. Or
So-
in the block, correct?
Or in the block.
Okay, but
And
that
there's-
ended up being a whole different entity, really.
It really did. It became different than I think the intention of it at the creation of Black. It was
Okay.
meant to be students that were struggling in math and were kind of an in-between. They really weren't serviced through an IEP or a Section 504, but they were below. Competency is defined by the Iowa assessment. So this is our way of an intervention instead of IE, which is more driven by to service the reading. It was sort of our IE, if you will,
Sure.
for math.
For math kids, right, that needed that help. So do you see that your instruction has changed as a result of, okay, so last year you had a co-teacher, 2 periods a day? And now this year you don't necessarily have a co-teacher, but you have a third person in your
Well, she's-
triangle that is
Yeah.
kind of a co-teacher, but she can also pull
Right.
kids out of the, how does that impact your instruction, or does it?
It's still, because I have a special ed background, so it's still, that is impacted my regular ed. I still do a lot of, scaffolding and chunking and things that you would do in a special ed room. I already did that, just because it's something I know that works.
Sure.
But I just noticed that we have to be a lot more, because we're going to have students that we're going to have to plan for reteaching. It's going to have to be a part of what we do. And Moby Max then, Mrs. Husk does the Moby Max Monday. And I don't use it every week, but I kind of as needed. We'll do that, and kids will go ahead and they are working on something that's for them as defined by Moby Max, and then I will pull, and Carmen will pull the kids that need to be retaught.
Okay. So it just looks a little different than last year. It's not really that much different.
It
just,
isn't.
It just looks a little different as far as logistics
Yeah.
go. So
And we do have a few students that, were alternatively assessed
Oh, okay.
They've
And now
been-
they're in the regular,
Yeah, and so that's a struggle in that they've never been tested with Iowa assessment. I think this will be the first year,
okay.
so I don't know.
That will be
It's an
interesting
unknown.
to see how that works, because previously they were alternately assessed, but they were in a different environment
Yeah.
for math altogether.
Right, exactly.
So the grouping, do you think the grouping between the three of you, is that
It's
helpful? Okay.
It is helpful, and it allows us to, because you can't really be 3 levels all the time, because even the
Right.
people that came and put on the what do I want to say, the summer classes that were up at
Oh, sure.
WIT,
Yep,
they even said that you can't honestly expect as you're going along to be able to be fully diversified every single day.
right,
Because it's something you continually work towards,
right.
and,
Yeah,
you know.
the differentiation piece, it's okay. In some activities, I think, and I don't know if you agree, but lend themselves really well to differentiating.
Yeah.
And then others, when you're doing direct instruction, how do you differentiate that?
Right,
into
exactly.
3 different segments?
Right. And
I don't know.
so, that's still like a new component that I think every year has to
Mhm.
be
Sure,
redeveloped and, or
sure.
sharpened,
Mhm.
gone through again, so,
Well, I think my personal opinion is that if you guys are able to continue that grouping with 3 of you, that's going to help everybody.
yeah, I think it does.
I think, because you're able to hit all or most levels.
Yeah.
You might have some real exceptions, but
Yeah. And the only thing is you have to be sensitive to the kid that gets pulled out.
sure,
Because if they're always pulled out because they always
struggle or.
show
yeah.
that they're needing that, some kids do have problems with that. So sometimes Carmen and I have switched where I'm just like, I'll keep the kids
Sure.
that would normally be pulled out, and she pulls the others.
So they don't feel,
So
it's not
hopefully-
in a slam to their self-esteem.
Right, and it's done, I would say, almost at a token level right now.
Okay,
Because it's not something we do all the time. It's not like
Right.
50% of the time.
yeah,
It depends on the crowd size, honestly,
yeah, well, I'm sure it does.
because it's easier to move a smaller group of kids than a bigger group.
And each period is different.
Yeah, each period's different, so.
All right, so when you look at this, looking at, just the all, for example, what kind of trends are you noticing just between last year and this year, or?
I was noticing that they are very similar. Of course, there are some jumps here and there, but when you look at it, it's not real alarming. Perhaps the properties in sequence going down 10% seems a bit, I wonder why.
Yeah, that was the first thing that jumped out at me, and I just thought, well, it could be the group of kids. Yeah, there's a lot of variables there. It could be what they had the previous year, what they had in 5th grade. Who
Who knows?
I suppose there's a lot of things.
And there again, we have the sped kids in this year, and maybe that's just a concept they don't get at all.
Right, that could be. Is that, as far as, you have to explain this to me, as far as higher level thinking skills, is that require more higher level thinking skills?
Yes, because you have to decide which property is being shown, and some
Okay.
of them are more challenging maybe than what we practice, as,
Okay.
you know.
So just, so a special needs child or even an ELL is going to have a more
exactly.
difficult time because there's
Yeah.
verbiage
Yeah,
included.
yeah, exactly.
So, so as far as the special ed kids being included, do you think that has something to do with perhaps numbers going down, say this year, because that model has changed as well as the ELL piece has changed as far as how many of those kids are included?
Right. Well, the other categories really didn't go down much. I think we've learned how to differentiate for those kids, whether it be they go with the aide for part of the time and she gets them started on the test and going, or I've even, eliminated questions from the test. They don't have to do as many, just that type of thing. Which at the beginning, it took me a little bit to figure that out, because it's the first year I've had the sped kids in my classroom.
Okay.
So maybe as we go on, the test scores will be,
Well, they might even out a little bit. They
right,
they
right.
might plateau a little bit.
And
or-
maybe with the properties and sequences, I needed to do more of that.
It's hard to know
Yeah,
when you're at it for the first time. So how do you think that okay, so last year, Roxanne had all the sped kids on her team. Now this year they're spread out.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And you guys are able to divide them 3 ways kind of, but how does that impact your instruction specifically?
I'd like to say it's a smaller class size when the special ed teacher takes 8 of the students, but it's not.
Oh, really?
No, I still have, last year I had smaller classes. I think my largest class last year was 25. And I mean, I had
Oh.
classes of 20. I think I had one in the teens. Just, one period, it just happened to be that's the one that everyone kept moving out of. But this year, even when she takes them, I still have 28,
Okay.
all the desks filled except for the side ones. So
Wow.
28 kids. So it doesn't really alleviate the numbers, and maybe that's why some areas have gone down too, because you're not able to get to them all.
Sure.
Especially integers are challenging for 7th graders.
That's another
maybe-
kind of higher level thinking concept.
Yep, and just to remember the steps and what you need to do.
Cool. Well, and those are all variables that I guess we kind of we think about, but we don't. We think about, it, but we don't.
Yeah.
Day to day, we're not going. Oh, well, this is because of this. And
Right.
so now this year, you're able to group a little differently with Carmen. Do you see that as being like, if we look at the data from now until 3 years down the road, if this model stays the same, how do you see that being beneficial? Being able to, I mean, where do you see the high going? Where do you see the middle going? And where do you see the low going? Do you see them coming closer together or getting further apart? Or
Well, right now we're flex grouping, and I have the high group, and they just think it's marvelous
okay,
to be in here. And
They
this is
don't
so much
have-
more fun. And the time just flew by. And well, that's because we're able to joke, we're able to get off topic and then get back on topic
Right.
without if you have the other students in there, you can't do that.
no,
You have to
just
say
stick to
on
business.
task and just go, okay, everybody back, we're adding, subtracting, whatever it is we're doing that day. And
Well, they're going at their own speed.
Right.
They're going at the speed they need to go at.
right. And so, and they like to be able to show me how they did it and come up to the board. Whereas when you have the regular class with 33 kids in there, you can't do that.
Not so much.
So it's nice to be able to divide up among 3 teachers, so the class size does go down a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
And kids are with other kids of their likability.
Sure. So without actually using that naughty T word tracking, you're kind of tracking within each class period.
Right, and we've only done it for adding and subtracting fractions, and when we go back to multiplying and dividing, we're gonna go back to our regular classes.
Okay.
Because that isn't as difficult, because you don't have to find a common denominator, you don't have to
Right,
do all
there's
that.
fewer
And
steps.
hopefully they know how to reduce, because they've been doing it.
Right.
So we'll put them back together for that,
Okay.
and see then after that if we feel it was beneficial to them.
Okay. Wonderful.
you.